stay focused on good governance, restore our international standing, get a strong southern border, get a sizzling economy, have safety in your neighborhood, safety on the streets, give your kids an education that's basic, the 3 R's, quit trying to indoctrinate them, go after the 80-20 issues. What kind of a rocket scientist does it take to recognize that biologic boys at XY are dramatically different than biologic girls at XX, and it doesn't change simply because someone starts injecting hormone blockers at the age of 13 or lopping off organs at the age of 15? If we stay focused on good government and that chaos has to be replaced by competence, that if you don't have accountability in your spending programs, you're not going to have affordability, that we can have both competence as well as compassion, that there's a place for public policy, but there's also a place to stay out of people's private homes, stay out of their doctor's offices, and recognize that people's moral compass is frequently wrought from their spiritual and religious values. And in this country, we allow and call for the separation of church and state. So we have to quit taking our religion and imposing it on someone else. When Republicans say that they're the party of limited government, then by damn George, be the party of limited government and recognize that people want the privilege of making their own moral decisions.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Please hit subscribe. We'd love to have you with us for every single episode. Now, today we're talking to Dr. Scott Jensen. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he ran for governor of Minnesota in 2022, and he lost to Tim Walz. The big reason that he lost, I will say without hesitation, is that he came out and said on a radio show, "I will ban abortion. We will ban abortion." He is turning that message around now, and I'd love for people to keep an open mind when they listen to him now, as we are to all of these candidates running on the Republican side. Dr. Scott Jensen recognized that that was a mistake. He even admits to a little embarrassment about it. So in this interview, you're going to hear what he would do differently and how he'd like to see Minnesota turn. Dr. Scott Jensen is next. Dr. Scott Jensen is running for governor, and he's one of a number of Republicans vying for the Republican spot for the nomination. And Tim Walz is likely the Democrat nominee. He's the incumbent. You couldn't beat him last time, Doctor. How can you beat him this time?
I learned a lot. I learned a lot from losing, and I think a lot of folks do. I think in public service, losing is a part of the process. I'd never lost before. In 2022, I lost, and I had a chance to do the soul searching that's necessary. I think I'm a little wiser, and I realize the mistakes we made. But I also think I understand many issues, the nuance of the issues better. And I want to bring those lessons to the table here. And I think I'm probably the only Republican running right now that has been as declarative that I'm not going to do things the way the Republicans have been doing things in the past. We have somehow found a way to grasp defeat from the jaws of victory too many times. And I think we need to get wiser. I think, Michele, I've had conversations with you, and I've been impressed with some of the equanimity that you bring to the table and some of your thoughtful analyses on the issues. And that's what the whole Republican Party has to do. And I'm absolutely committed to that. And I think that I'm the only candidate right now that's come out and said, we're going to do this differently.
It has been frustrating to see Republicans in this state where Republicans have won in the past. We've had Republican governors, make these mistakes as a party. So let's talk first about the glaring mistake of your first candidacy. And you and I have talked about this. There's no pussyfooting around here. It was I'm going to ban abortion. We are going to ban abortion in a state that is very I wouldn't even say pro, choice. They're kind of pro-abortion. Now, there are laws here in the state of Minnesota about it. And I don't know how people are going to unsee those ads that they saw just 4 years ago with you saying that in your voice. How are you going to convince them that this is not a threat to those people who want to maintain choice? I have often told you about my friends at besthotgrill.com. They are doing something they rarely do, which is to hold a sale on their Solaire infrared grills. From November 24th through December 5th, they're offering a 25% discount off their Solaire Anywhere and Solaire Everywhere portable infrared grills. These, I got to tell you, are the perfect gift for a college student, a tailgater, someone who loves to boat, an RVer, a picnicker, or just a foodie, or for you. Don't you deserve the best under the tree this season? Also through December 5th, when you purchase a 27-inch or larger Solaire infrared grill, you will receive for free a stainless steel griddle and a quality USA-made cover to protect your investment. That's up to a $650 value. Now imagine not only grilling juicy and tasty food, but also making eggs, pancakes, smash burger, fajitas, pizza, anything you would like on your free professional style griddle. Go to besthotgrill.com to learn more about USA-made Solaire infrared grills and their Black Friday Cyber Monday sale. That's besthotgrill.com. Buy Solaire infrared grills on sale through December 5th at besthotgrill.com. I don't know how people are going to unsee those ads that they saw just 4 years ago with you saying that in your voice. How are you going to convince them that this is not a threat to those people who want to maintain choice?
I'd say several things. And I always cringe a little bit because it always feels like I'm being defensive. But if you look at the politicians of the day, whether you're talking about President Trump, whether you're talking about Norm Coleman, whether you talk about Joe Biden, when you talk about people who go into public service frequently, their positions will evolve on a given issue. And they will evolve in part because you gain insight and you have more conversations. To be fair to me, 1973, Roe v. Wade was passed. It was the year I graduated from high school. It had been literally the law of the land for my entire adult life. And in 2022, the magnetic pull of the Republican rhetoric captivated our campaign, and that was unfortunate. We were not running to change Roe v. Wade or to change abortion laws. We were running to make Minnesota government better. And I made comments that were, I think, ill-advised, and I think it was sort of captured in the moment. And there were other candidates that were running, and it seemed like a race to the right. So whatever you say, don't worry about it, because the rhetoric of the Republicans and the rhetoric of the Democrats doesn't change. It's been this way for 50 years until Roe v. Wade was changed in June of 2022. And that's on me, Michelle. That's not on anybody else. It was my fault. I don't think that I really looked at the issue to the way that I should have. And I think one of the things that happened too is there was a certain intrinsic hypocrisy that was emerging. I mean, I was standing there saying that I'd already had COVID and I had antibodies, and I didn't want anyone telling me what I had to do with my body in terms of taking a COVID vaccine. And yet I was standing there telling women that they didn't get the same kind of autonomy. And I feel a little embarrassed by that, because quite frankly, I think that we have known since the 1990s in Minnesota that the Supreme Court has said that access to abortion in Minnesota is a constitutional right. And that's been overwhelmingly supported by Minnesotans, just as you've said, even substantially supported by Republicans, by Catholics, by numerous groups. And I think that we saw in 2023, the legislature put it into statute. So frankly, the issue is done. There's no governor candidate on the right side or the left side of the aisle that can do anything about it. It's settled law. But what's not settled, and there are many things we can do, is I think we can fund pregnancy resource centers. So women that find themselves in a situation where they're dealing with an unplanned pregnancy have a full menu of options. And I think we can make affordable contraception and birth control available to everybody. And this shouldn't be just on the shoulders of women. This should be a program that all Minnesotans pay for. This is wrong what we've done. And we should provide a continuum of care and let people know that if you're pregnant and you're not certain what you want to do, we're going to provide prenatal care, labor and delivery care, postpartum care, day care, and we will provide this so you do not have this financial encumbrance that will weigh you down for the remainder of your life or cause you to leave the the profession that you were in. We need to do those things. And I think we can teach natural family planning and fertility facts in high school. And lastly, why don't we streamline adoption? Why do we make it so difficult? Peel away the regulations. If we do these things, I mean, clearly it's logical. If you want less abortions, let's try to do whatever we can to have less unplanned pregnancies. And we have a far better chance of reducing that number.
Well, yes, and a lot of that comes down to personal responsibility, quite frankly. And you're talking about paying for a lot of these things for women who can't afford it. I think the fiscal conservatives would come back at you at, how are we going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for all this free daycare and all of this stuff? And given this state's history, it's ripe for fraud, a program like that. How do you respond to that?
Michelle, we have folks on the Democratic side that seem hell-bent on making certain that illegal immigrants have free health care. Never mind the fact that we've got over 20,000 veterans in Minnesota that don't have a shred of health insurance. So I think we need to get right here. And the way we get right is we recognize that when it comes to family planning and taking responsibility, it's ridiculous to put this on the shoulders of women alone. This is a societal issue. Arguably, we're seeing our birth rate go down. We're seeing our death rate go up. People are concerned about what this means for the future of Minnesota, the future of America, and frankly, the future of the world. I think that we can find the dollars to do this fairly, which we haven't done in my lifetime.
I mentioned the word fraud. In Minnesota, it has run rampant through a number of programs. How do you think this has happened? And we'll start there. How has this happened?
Michelle, I run a business. I run my own medical clinic. And my staff knows that we all have a responsibility to keep our eyes wide open. And if we see something that isn't working out or doesn't seem right, say something. If we're doing lab tests and all of a sudden we find out that every lab test is skewed and it's too far to the right on the scale of normal and abnormal on a lab test, say a ProTime, an INR, checking someone's blood thinning level with Coumadin on board, we say something because occasionally we'll see lab tests and all of a sudden we'll see a trend. So we'll notify our reference lab and say, hey, you folks better recalibrate because something's going wrong. That's what we need to have happen in government. Tim Walz has never told the people that work for him that they need to recalibrate. If you work in a department that has some responsibility for feeding our future, and you happen to drive by a facility that says that they provide 5,000 meals a day to kids, and you've never seen more than 3 cars in the parking lot, and it's not been shoveled or snowplowed in the winter, you have an obligation to say something. And Tim Walz has the obligation to say, we are going to have a culture where we call out fraud, we're detecting it, we're going to use our eyes, use our ears, and use our brains to figure this out. That's the biggest thing. He has allowed a culture to exist. When I was in the Senate, there was a situation where someone wasn't doing their job. They were on the hot seat, and Tim Walz knew it. Did he fire that person? No. He shifted her laterally. She kept her 6-figure salary, and nobody heard about her again. And he had basically de-escalated the situation, and from his perspective, perhaps he thought he solved the situation. But it contributed to the culture, and the culture just goes on and on and on. It doesn't matter whether we lost 800 million or 1.5 billion. If we don't change the culture of how we're doing government in Minnesota, we're not going to stop the fraud.
Some of that change of culture, it definitely means a change of people. It seems to me there are a lot of dirty politicians. I don't know if they're elected or if they're just staff or what they are, but there are a lot of people with some blame to shoulder. And so that's going to be a difficult task. Where do you even begin?
Well, I would say this. I would be very careful if I were Republicans about blaming everything on Democrats, because quite frankly, Republicans had the Senate for 5 years or so. They had the House. They have a fraud committee in the House that has put forward no major bills. No major legislation has come out of that fraud committee. Members of the committee itself have said that it's more window dressing than anything else. We have seen the fraud identified by the Office of the Legislative Auditor. We've seen it by the U.S. Attorney. The bottom line is we all have to take this seriously, and we've got to start being statesmen. And that means that when you get elected, your priority shouldn't shift from doing the right thing to making certain that you get reelected next time around. And that happens on both the Democrat and Republican side.
Sure.
And I think that if we're going to really get serious about this, we need to call it out. Why the legislature didn't put an inspector general in place the last session where you had bipartisan support for it and have that person operate independently of the governor, independently of the legislature. Let this person go find the fraud and follow it. And then let's make sure that the things we put into place, that they're enforced. I don't think we have that going on.
Accountability seems to be in short supply throughout government at every level.
But in the private sector, Michelle, if a company's struggling
Yep.
and they bring in a consultant or an auditor, they're not going to bring this person in and then put handcuffs on his hands and say, don't you dare find something that might be embarrassing to us. You let that person go and you say, help us be better so that we can continue to survive. Tim Walz didn't do that. The Republicans and Democrats didn't do that. Yes, this buck stops at Tim Walz's desk, but the Republicans are not entirely clean on this as well. They could have done far more.
Yeah. It's terribly frustrating for the average Minnesotan to watch all of this. It's also frustrating. There are a couple big issues here, but I want to get to one that is pervasive across the United States. And Tim Walz sat with J.B. Pritzker the other day, and Tim Walz has been calling ICE, the Gestapo. And so there has been massive illegal immigration to the United States of America. We all saw it, even though the previous administration told us the border was secure and that this was a figment of our imagination. Now we're dealing with the aftermath of this. The border is ostensibly sealed, but we are still dealing with criminals, all kinds of people here that really aren't supposed to be here. What would your position be on this? Would you cooperate with the president if he wanted to send the National Guard to help crime? Where would you work with the administration and where would you push back?
I would absolutely work with the administration. I think we need to get serious and understand that what this has done, bringing in literally more than 10 million illegal immigrants or allowing them to come in, this is an existential crisis for our country. If you go back and listen to Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama speak about immigration when they were president, they said the things that Donald Trump is doing. This is laughable, the way our country is reacting to this. We have veterans who put their lives on the line, don't have any insurance, but we're hell-bent on making sure that illegal immigrants have carte blanche free health insurance. What are we doing here? It's not as if you don't have health insurance, you automatically fall over and die. There are many people who don't have health insurance. So don't tell me the sky is falling and act like Chicken Little because you have illegal immigrants who don't have the right to be here not getting free health insurance. When we start having governors create sanctuary laws and sanctuary cities and say, we're going to ignore the interpretation of the Constitution, we're going to ignore the courts, we're going to ignore the President of the United States because we've got our own little political agenda, shame on you. We absolutely should be serious about this. Now, does this mean that we can't do something about the DACA program, the Dreamers? Sure we can. These are people that are special situations who've never known a country other than America. We should deal with that. These are people who have been woven into the fabric of our society. They love America. They want to help America. They want to build America. Now, in terms of people that have been here for more than a certain period of time that are illegal immigrants, President Trump has made proposals that could potentially solve the problem. But what we've got is we've got the Democrats unilaterally saying, we're not going to follow the law. We're going to demonstrate against the law. And when the police come to help the ICE folks and the immigration folks do their job, the police are all of a sudden labeled again as the bad guys. Tim Walz gets right on top of this again. This is why people think that Tim Walz has been a strong supporter of defunding the police or at least undermining the work they do. Now, Tim Walz can say whatever he wants, but he did stand with people like Ilhan Omar, and he has stood with people like Mary Moriarty. So when Tim Walz tells Minnesotans that he's for safety in the neighborhoods and to push back against crime, I don't think Minnesotans are buying it.
Well, I guess we'll see, and hopefully that he is pressed on that, because it certainly. I was at a dinner last night, a function, a fundraiser, and almost everyone at my table was ready to bail on Minnesota and said if he wins again, they're out of here. Go ahead.
Michelle, I'd like to just circle back to one point. Part of the reason that Tim Walz might win will be because of the Republicans. If we continue to think that we get to run on issues of personal privacy, we will reduce our chances of winning.
Yeah.
President Trump showed us a pathway. He said, stay focused on good governance, restore our international standing, get a strong southern border, get a sizzling economy, have safety in your neighborhood, safety on the streets, give your kids an education that's basic, the 3 R's, quit trying to indoctrinate them, go after the 80-20 issues. What kind of a rocket scientist does it take to recognize that biologic boys at XY are dramatically different than biologic girls at XX, and it doesn't change simply because someone starts injecting hormone blockers at the age of 13 or lopping off organs at the age of 15. If we stay focused on good government and that chaos has to be replaced by competence, that if you don't have accountability in your spending programs, you're not going to have affordability, that we can have both competence as well as compassion, that there's a place for public policy, but there's also a place to stay out of people's private homes, stay out of their doctor's offices, and recognize that people's moral compass is frequently wrought from their spiritual and religious values. And in this country, we allow and call for the separation of church and state. So we have to quit taking our religion and imposing it on someone else. When Republicans say that they're the party of limited government, then by damn George, be the party of limited government and recognize that people want the privilege of making their own moral decisions.
Moral decisions for sure, educational decisions, I would think as well. And maybe that is on the spectrum of morality. I don't know. To me, it's pretty basic. I'm the daughter of a public school teacher, and I watched over the course of my life how public education has changed, not only in California where I'm from, but here in Minnesota. And we were discussing this last night at this particular event, which was focused on kids, particularly inner city kids, and the short shrift they're dealt by these rotting public schools. And where do you start? We know the facts. We know how, and one person at the table said, well, it's all because of COVID that our reading and math isn't good. I don't think we can just blame COVID for this dramatic of a dip in our test scores. So where do we start?
To blame COVID completely is ridiculous, and it's short-sighted. If you look at the graphs in terms of where is the spending gone per teacher, per kid, and per administrator, the graph shows it all. I was on the school board, Michele, for 10 years in Waconia in the 1990s and early 2000s, and I was chairperson of the school board for 3 years. And I saw the movement to build and grow the administration, to literally add a little mini medical clinic in every building, to have a principal in every building, even if it was 3 elementary schools. We need to get smart and recognize that this is a 3-legged stool, and it starts with the kids, to be sure, but it's the teachers as well. Teachers don't feel safe in the classroom. They don't feel supported. They don't feel respected. They're a profession. Parents are the 3rd leg of this stool, and parents have to absolutely be encouraged to connect with the teachers, watch their kids. But here's the thing. If you walk by my medical clinic and happen to see me walking down the hallway and you were in the waiting room, you wouldn't come and stop me and say, hey, Dr. Jensen, I wanted to talk to you about this. Why do we let parents do that necessarily to teachers? Teachers have a full schedule. They need to be respected. If you want to meet with the teacher about your child, we should have some sort of structure in place where parents have the access that they need and teachers feel they're respected, and they make an appointment and they talk about Johnny or Jill and they say, why is she doing well or why is he doing poorly, whatever. But we need to stop bashing teachers. If you've got a problem with the teachers union, which I do, say it. But when it comes to the teachers, recognize that they work hard. It's a tough job. I remember teaching Sunday school for 7th and 8th graders and going home after church and telling my wife I would never be a public junior high teacher. It's just too hard. I think Republicans need to come alongside of teachers and say, we know how valuable you are. We're going to get the dollars more closely allocated to the classroom. We have teachers that should be paid 6 figures, to be sure. We probably have some teachers that shouldn't be in the classroom. You could say the same thing about doctors. We've got doctors that should not be taking care of patients. But the bottom line is it starts with the teachers, the parents, and the kids, and get the money going to the classroom, not to more administration.
Well, yeah, I think that the top heavy, the financing of all of these administrators is is really ridiculous. It it certainly doesn't seem to be helping. It's not boosting test scores. I'm not one of, hey, just throw more money at the problem. It's how you spend that money that is imperative, which I think is what you're saying.
Well, let me just jump on that one,
Yeah.
Michelle. If you look at what the legislature has done to public education, first off, they say, you've got to take all comers. Some schools might be private schools, and I'm a fan of private schools, public schools, homeschooling, all of it. I've got grandkids in each one of those sectors. But if you look at the mandates or the partially funded mandates that have been put on public schools, it's almost impossible for them to succeed. And then when you see the legislature play these games where a previously partially funded mandate is kept in place, but the funding is withdrawn, this is a common ploy whereby the politicians can make it look like they've cut the budget and now they have a balanced budget. Bull roar. What you're doing is you're compromising the ability of public education to succeed.
What are some of these mandates? Because I'm not aware.
The mandatory breakfast, the hot lunch, all of these. I've talked to people in the public schools and in the private schools, and they said the amount of food that is wasted every day is unconscionable. It's unbelievable. We have lunches that many people wouldn't want to eat. We've mandated lunches. We've said it's going to be free, and then we pull some of the funding. We have many, many people sending their kids to public school who can afford to send a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with the kid and an apple or an orange. We don't need to have the kids go into vending machines, and we don't need to have the school districts pay for programs that don't necessarily accomplish the objective. This is what's been happening, I think, when we posture and we do our legislation in the arena of public education, is we have this overreach and this feel-good stuff, but we don't monitor the objective or the outcome. Right. And we don't drop the program. Yeah. When we start a program that has spending involved, we should have a sunset tucked into it automatically so that if it isn't achieving its objectives, it goes away automatically.
I think it's going to be crucial to explain this to the voters in a very simple way. Because what the Democrat side will do and what Tim Walz will do is say, you're taking away hot meals from our children. You're going to let them go hungry. That's what they're going to say. And it's their way of ripping at the heartstrings of people, going totally on feeling and emotion rather than fact. And that's how so many of these programs get started, how so many of them never get cut, because the accusation is you have no compassion, you're greedy, it's all about money with you, and now people are going to starve and die, as Elizabeth Warren loves to say. So how do we, the Republican side, yes, and I say I want people to know where I stand, it needs to formulate a message that resonates with Minnesotans.
Well, let's start with this message. Let's let kids' education be about education. Let's not be sending Johnny or Jill's medicines to school. Let's criticize the physicians where physicians should be criticized. When physicians tell parents that Johnny has to have these medicines brought to school because he needs to have them every 8 hours when there's no science to support that, that's silliness. That's why I get phone calls telling me that Jill got Johnny's ADD medicine and Johnny got Jill's seizure medicine. Start there. Let's strip away the need to have so much administrative support to administer medicines during the day. The most important medicines that should be in school are the respiratory medicines, the inhalers for the kids with asthma and allergies. But physicians haven't done their part. Parents could do better as well. The administration could do better as well. But ultimately, it's the legislators, it's the politicians who they're not running government like they would run their own business. Mm-hmm. In business, if I try something and after a month it's clear that it's not working, I stop it. In politics, if they put an initiative into place and it's not working, it isn't stopped. It goes on ad infinitum. And when it comes up, if it does come up for renewal or not, the courage of the legislators to vote the program out of place isn't there. So they just pass it on. That's why you have to have these programs automatically go away unless they're achieving their objective. Because trust me, Michelle, every politician will vote for a successful program because they love to run a victory lap, even if they never had anything to do with that legislation.
Three things you want listeners to take away from our conversation that either we haven't mentioned or that you want to reinforce, that you, Dr. Scott Jensen, bring to this gubernatorial race that nobody else brings. The three things you want people to resonate about Scott Jensen's candidacy.
I'm a business person. I run a clinic. I know the pressure of meeting payroll every 2 weeks. If I don't bring in enough revenue through my own actions, my own productivity, and my partners, we are in trouble. I think that we need to support business. I think the Paid Family Medical Leave Act is going to crush many small businesses. I think we need to stimulate our economy by way of tax credits for small businesses that are growing. We need to unshackle the marketplace. We need to use technology to develop our workforce more quickly. We need to elevate the trades over college because college has been oversold. We need to pay attention to objectives and outcomes rather than feel-good overreaching. We need to understand no more taxes. And at the end of the day, we need to recognize that the engine of our economy is the private sector, not government. If we do those things, we've moved towards lowering the cost of living. The second thing I would say is if we want safe neighborhoods and streets that don't have hot rodders breaking the law and drive-by shootings taking place, then let's respect the work of the police. Let's fill out the roster that we should have for police. Let's provide the qualified immunity police need in order for them to do their job and not run in fear of going on a bad call that turns out poorly. And lastly, when it comes to education, we need to recognize that as a society, Michele, we have not protected our kids. We've got children making decisions where they cannot possibly give informed consent as to what it means to have hormones blocked or body parts lopped off. We are not protecting girls and women on the field of competition, nor in terms of their privacy. Girls and women are special. Girls and women are anatomically endowed with things that allow our race to continue forward. They deserve this privacy. If you want education to stand up and be strong, then let's get back to the basics and stop the virtue signaling. Every parent wants their kid to get a good education so they can dream dreams. So it comes down to the economy, it comes down to safety and respecting the police, and it comes down to a basic education. Those are the things that we need to run on, and we need to recognize that people want their privacy to make their own personal matters in questions of ethics and morals and how that intersects with their spiritual and religious values.
He is Dr. Scott Jensen. What's your website again? Where can people find you?
Dr. Scott Jensen, DrScottJensen.com. And Michele, I sure appreciate your voice because you're standing out, and we have Republicans that have not stood, and I'm not saying whether you're Republican or Democrat, but you have been clear. And if we had more Republicans speaking clearly and telling one another, listen, stop grasping defeat from the jaws of victory, we can win this time, we would be in a better position.
Let's keep our fingers crossed because I make it very clear I am not a Democrat. I am a conservative, and I am all about education and public safety, and yes, growing the economy and having a safe, good place for everyone to thrive. To me, it's pretty simple, and people have tried to make it more complex than that. Dr. Jensen, thank you. We will be following up with you, I'm sure.
Thank you.
And I end every podcast saying, be brave, do good. I think every candidate entering a political environment like this is demonstrating courage and a desire to do good. So I'll leave it there, and we will see you next time. You can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.